Some engines don't need to flex to be called legends. You only have to look at how they served. They did their job, kept their own rhythm, and outlived an entire generation. In this episode, I tell it straight through the working life of the machines. Each one is tied to a real phase and a real need of its time. From freezing battlefields to workshops, docks, rail lines, and offshore rigs. 4 names will appear in order. The T55's V5 is reliable enough that it must be able to start in brutal cold. Detroit Diesel 271, small but shrill like a power saw. EMD 645, the railroad pack horse. And the monster Caterpillar D399, a purely mechanical V16. Listen closely to the engines, and you'll realize history isn't in books. It's in firing rhythm, vibration rhythm, and in how people demand a machine stay alive at any cost. (1958) V55, T55. Just starting in the cold is already a win. If you like the kind of video where one engine sound can make you picture an entire steel and fire era behind it, hit follow on Steam Engine for us. It's only one tap, but it tells the team you're still standing in rhythm with these legendary machines. If you talk about the T55 and only look at the gun barrel or the armor, you're only seeing half the story. The other half lives in its heart, the V55, a V12 liquid-cooled diesel, a direct descendant of the legendary V2 line from World War II. In the skin-cutting cold of steppe regions and icebound winters, an engine can become lazy in the most literal physics sense. Oil thickens like asphalt, batteries weaken, metal contracts, and every piston-related friction inside multiplies. In that condition, starting is no longer a simple technical action. It becomes a battle of wits between people and the weather. With the T55, they don't bet on the lack of an electric starter. The design prioritizes a solution that is far more certain and stubborn: compressed air starting. Picture the silence of dawn being ripped apart by the hiss of high-pressure air blasting straight into the cylinders, forcing a huge engine block to turn. Once it spins enough, compresses enough, and heats enough, it catches on its own. Then the rough first growl settles into a deep, dull, firing beat that shakes a 36-ton steel body. That moment, when the event appears, is when the operator finally exhales, because they know the system is officially alive. The V55 mindset says a lot about its era. Designed for the most certain solution in the worst possible scenario. No need for flashy finesse, just reliability, even if it's rough. Beyond compressed air start, there are extremely real-world preparation rituals, like building a fire to warm the bottom of the oil sump, or using an auxiliary preheater to melt the cold inside the block. As long as the vehicle doesn't sit there like a dead iron lump on a freezing morning. It's practicality with zero romance, but it keeps a heavy machine ready to carry a load and pressure at all times. The T55's durability teaches a very real lesson. Power is sometimes not about sprinting. It's about it must start and it must move when everything around it wants to freeze in place. And once it beats the cold and finds its rhythm, it will carry people across the harshest terrain without a single complaint. Detroit Diesel 271, 2-71. Small but shrill, screaming Jimmy in the truest sense. There are engines you don't need to read a nameplate to recognize. You only need to hear them. Ah, a two-stroke Detroit. Its sound has two layers. The first layer is the rapid-firing beat, because a two-stroke engine fires every crank revolution, so it sounds like it's spinning faster than it really is. The second layer is the signature. The high-pitched whine of the roots blower is doing scavenging. That whine is a big reason the Detroit two-stroke line earned the famous nickname Screaming Jimmy. Detroit Diesel Series 71 was named for 71 cubic inches per cylinder. The 271, often said the working person way as 271, is an inline two-cylinder with 142 cubic inches total displacement, about 2.3 liters. 2.3 liters sounds small, but don't let the number fool you. Detroit two-strokes don't live by being big. They live by modular thinking and by working across a huge range of real-life use cases. Small generators, construction equipment, pumps, compressors, auxiliary marine engines. Anywhere you need an engine that's compact, easy to lift, easy to swap, easy to fix. It's like a utility engine from the era before electronics took over. The technical point is significant, but it's easier to understand in real-life terms. A two-stroke doesn't have a separate intake stroke like a four-stroke, so it needs a way to push fresh air in and force exhaust out. That's where the roots blower steps in. It forces air into the cylinder to sweep it clean so the engine can breathe. So unlike many four-strokes that can inhale naturally, Detroit two-strokes are almost required to have a blower to live in rhythm. And that blower is both powerful and a sonic fingerprint. When it whines, you know instantly. In real-world use, the Detroit 271 is often remembered for being hands-on. Mechanical linkages, mechanical injection, with many aftermarket sources emphasizing all mechanical character and unit injectors. Back then, the biggest advantage was simple. A mechanic out in the middle of nowhere could still fix it. You don't need a laptop. You need ears, a pressure gauge, and the habit of listening to an engine. The whine shifts. The beat turns uneven, the smoke changes color, and the machine talks to you. And because of that whine, not everyone likes Detroit two-strokes. Some people love it because it feels alive, like a power saw doing real work. Some people hate it because it's loud and relentless. But whether you love it or not, it's hard to deny what it represents. A period when engines were built to serve multiple industries through simplicity and readiness. Heat. Heat. From one small but shrill machine, the story jumps to something truly large. Not tank large, but large enough to pull an entire economy on rails. EMD 645 enters with a different kind of sound, a steady, stable scream, like a massive generator sealed inside a steel body. EMD 645. The rail rumble and a life of pulling forever without getting tired. If there is one sound that makes many Americans recognize railroading without even looking, it is the steady roar of an EMD. The EMD 645 line is a family of two-stroke diesel engines with a 45-degree V angle, widely used for locomotives, marine work, and industry. It entered production in the mid-1960s and became a major leap forward from the earlier 567 line. The clever part of the 645 name sits right in the number, 645 cubic inches per cylinder. When a single cylinder is already 645 cubic inches, you immediately understand why it pulls so hard. Large displacement builds a thick torque foundation, suited to heavy hauling at low to mid speeds. That is freight rail character in its purest form. The 16-cylinder version, 16-645E3, is tied to widely common locomotives like the GP40 and SD40. The turbocharged 16-cylinder configuration is often cited at 3,000 horsepower in the 40 series generation. But what made the 645 a backbone was not horsepower alone. It was the way EMD built the system for easy maintenance, shared components, easy parts replacement, and, most importantly, the ability to hold rhythm through long shifts. EMD's two-stroke design requires scavenging, either a roots blower or a turbo with assist at low RPM. You can think of that as the lungs that keep the engine breathing evenly, especially when a train must brace itself to move thousands of tons from the first inch of wheel turn. In that moment, the turbo's whine blends into the deep roar of the V16 and becomes a powerful mechanical symphony. That is why the 645 has a sound of its own. It screams steadily, not the kind that surges and then fades away. On the rails, a steady rhythm is life. Steady rhythm means stable pull, stable heat, stable power output for generator-based traction, and a consistent behind you that does not get jerked around. This discipline-level consistency turned the 645 into a symbol of reliability in the long, fierce competition among diesel builders. People can argue about technology and complex designs, but out in the real world, the deciding question is still this: which one can run longer, be fixed faster with the most basic tools, and spend the least time dead on the line? The 645 won by that stubborn durability. One small technical detail that feels very real life is the RPM limit. The 645 line often has a red line around 900 RPM. To outsiders, 900 RPM can sound slow. To railroad people, it is an extremely smart choice. Keep engine speed in a safe band, prioritize component life, and make sure what matters most, pull and durability, is ready 24/7. Imagine standing next to a massive iron block shaking at 900 revolutions per minute, the ground under your feet resonating with every firing beat from 16 large pistons. The 645's life story is also memorable for its legacy status. Even with newer generations under computer control, parts and support for the 645 keep existing for a long time because there are simply so many still out there. There are so many that the world has to keep feeding them, and it, in return, keeps the transportation bloodstream alive. In everyday language, the 645 doesn't need to prove it is modern. It only needs to prove it cannot be replaced. And for railroading, that is the highest title an engine can earn. Not because it is beautiful, but because without it, the whole system locks solid. The EMD 645 doesn't just pull freight cars. It pulls an entire industrial world through some of its most turbulent decades. Caterpillar D399, a purely mechanical V16 block and the heartbeat of offshore rigs. If EMD 645 is the roar of the rails, Caterpillar D399 is the stubborn heartbeat beneath tugboat decks and far-off offshore oil rigs. This is a pure mechanical V16 monster from an era when people trusted steel mass and skilled hands more than lines of computer code. With nearly 4 liters per cylinder, about 64 liters total displacement, the D399 was not born to perform for speed. It was born to carry jobs where, if it stops, an enormous economic system goes numb. What makes technical people go crazy for the D399 is its no-negotiation stubbornness. This is a 4-stroke diesel line, turbocharged and aftercooled, with a fully mechanical fuel system. Stand next to a running D399 and you can feel an extremely dense energy. The exhaust note isn't ear-searing like some 2-strokes. It is deep, solid, and heavy with the weight of tons of metal moving back and forth. In the 1,200 revolutions per minute range, this V16 can sustain continuous power in the thousands of horsepower for tens of thousands of hours without needing rest. That number speaks for real-world durability. The brilliance of the D399 is this. It is the last fortress of the mechanical era. No complicated electronic boards, no sensors that get picky in salty sea air. Everything from the injection pump to the governor runs on gears and springs. Tugboat and rig mechanics love it because they can talk to it. Listen to the valve gear tapping, watch how the oil lines vibrate, or simply smell the exhaust. And they know whether the engine is healthy or getting moody. On stormy nights at sea, the D399's steady rumble down in the engine room is the surest promise of safety for the whole crew. If you get chills imagining 16 pistons the size of buckets hammering non-stop to push a tugboat through heavy seas, then you are absolutely on the same frequency as steam engine. Don't forget to hit like so we have more budget to hunt down steel giants like this. And while we're here, between a screaming Detroit and a stubborn, low-key Cat D399, which sounds more to your taste? Leave a comment. Every share you post is one more firing beat that keeps the channel moving forward. In the end, whether it's battlefield, rails, or open ocean, these machines all teach us one thing. Real value is standing firm and running steady when pressure is at its heaviest. After hearing the story of these 4 engines, I think what lingers most isn't dry numbers like horsepower or cylinder displacement. It's a very real feeling. When it's needed, it has to start. When it has to carry work, it has to hold rhythm. The V55 in the T55 is the kind of backbone that says, no matter how cold it gets, we still move. The Detroit 271 is compact, but it screams with stubborn grit in every workshop. The EMD 645 is the disciplined roar behind cross-continent runs, and the Caterpillar D399 is like a silent giant out on the ocean. It doesn't say much, it just rumbles on and keeps pulling, so the entire system behind it can operate with absolute confidence. If you've made it this far and the engine sounds start playing in your head, you can feel that faint vibration under your feet, or you remember standing next to those hot steel blocks back in the day, then I believe you're the same kind of person as steam engine. Try describing the one sound or vibration from these four machines that you remember most. Is it the sharp, steel-edged whine of the two-stroke Detroit? Or the solid, planted rumble of Caterpillar's V16 block? Share that feeling in the comments below, because it's priceless material for us to keep digging deeper in the next episodes. Don't forget to hit follow and like to support us. It's just one tap, but it's fuel that keeps the channel's firing rhythm alive. And one more thing. Which engine do you want us to dissect next? A thick, growling marine diesel? Or a classic hot bulb that has to be torched red before it will agree to fire? Comment the engine name below and we'll prioritize the one the community calls out the most.